My name is Commander Kaelrik of the Tirynthian Imperial Fleet, and I enslaved humans because it was efficient. That's what I tell myself now, looking back at the commander I used to be. That it was a strategy, that it was duty, that it was what any rational commander would do when faced with a labor shortage and an abundant supply of conquered primitives who'd lost their war and their right to self-determination. I told myself it was necessary, but the truth is simpler and uglier. I enslaved them because I could, because my empire gave me authority, and I never questioned whether authority made something right. The facility on Kepler 7 was my command for 3 cycles, a production complex built into the mountains of a dead world, churning out weapons and ships for the Tirynthian war machine. We'd taken it from the humans after their pathetic attempt at resistance collapsed in 6 weeks. Their military was outdated. Their tactics are predictable. Their surrender was inevitable. Standard procedure after conquest: integrate useful resources, eliminate threats, enslave the rest for labor. The humans of Kepler 7 became workers, tools, components in the production chain. I didn't lose sleep over it. They worked 16-hour shifts in the manufacturing sectors. Minimal rations calculated to exact caloric requirements for sustained labor. Basic shelters that kept them alive but offered no comfort. Medical care only when productivity was threatened by illness or injury. The mortality rate was acceptable by imperial standards, roughly 12% annually, well within operational parameters. We replaced losses with new captures from neighboring systems. Supply exceeded demand. Humans bred faster than we could work them to death, which made them valuable in a disposable sort of way. I filed reports monthly. Production up 14%. Costs down 8%. Efficiency maximized. Command was pleased with my performance. I walked the facility floors daily, inspecting operations, ensuring quotas were met, maintaining the visible presence that kept the workforce compliant. The humans kept their heads down when I passed, worked faster, moved with precision, born of fear. Good. Fear was productive, kept them focused, kept them compliant. I'd learned early in my command that the key to managing slaves was simple: make the consequences of disobedience worse than the misery of obedience. A few public executions in the first month. A few examples made of troublemakers who spoke of resistance. After that, they policed themselves, turned in anyone who spoke of rebellion. It was efficient. I remember the first time I saw Liora. Sector 7, Assembly Line 4. During my routine morning inspection, she was smaller than most humans, which made her maybe 5.5 feet tall, barely came up to my chest. Dark hair pulled back in the standard work tie. Face covered in the grime that came from 14 hours working near the forges where we manufactured plasma cores for warship engines. She was installing guidance components in a missile system, hands moving with practiced precision. I noticed her because she didn't flinch when I approached. Most humans either froze completely or worked faster, hands shaking, desperate to avoid notice. She just kept working, steady rhythm, like I wasn't there. "Your designation," I said in the human language we'd forced them to use for operational efficiency. 7419. She didn't look up, didn't pause in her work. "Your production rate is 6% above sector average. You complete 14 units per shift when the standard is 13. Is that a problem, Commander?" It was, sort of. High performers stood out. Standing out meant scrutiny. Scrutiny meant potential troublemakers. But her tone wasn't defiant, just matter of fact, professional almost. Like she was a skilled technician discussing her work, rather than a slave responding to her owner. "Continue your work," I said, and moved on. But I remembered her, filed her designation in my mental notes as someone to watch closely. The facility ran smoothly for 2 cycles after that encounter. Production targets met or exceeded every month. Discipline maintained through standard enforcement protocols. Minor incidents occurred. A fight in the barracks over food rations. A work slowdown in Sector 3 when a foreman died from heat exhaustion. One attempted escape that ended when perimeter drones located the runner. But nothing systemic. Nothing that threatened operations. I reported to command that the human workforce was stable, productive, and properly subdued. They commended me on my efficiency. The sabotage started small. So small, we almost missed it. Equipment failures in Sector 7. Minor at first. A conveyor malfunction that cost us 2 hours of production. A power fluctuation that shut down 3 assembly lines. A coolant leak that required emergency repairs. Maintenance logged them as standard wear and tear. But the failures increased in frequency over the following weeks. Always Sector 7. Always during peak production hours. Always costing us time and output. I reviewed the maintenance logs myself, cross-referenced failure patterns against equipment specifications. The numbers didn't match normal equipment degradation. These were deliberate. I ordered surveillance increased in Sector 7, specifically. I watched the feeds myself during night cycles. I saw nothing suspicious at first. Workers coming and going. Maintenance crews performing repairs. Everything is routine. Then I noticed her again. 7419. Liora. She'd arrive at her station 15 minutes before shift started. She'd spend those 15 minutes near the control panels, supposedly running diagnostic checks. Her hands moved quickly, too quickly to be reading displays. Tech Officer Venn reviewed the footage in detail. She's accessing restricted systems, he reported the next day. Planting code fragments in the manufacturing control software. Nothing obvious. Small corruptions that compound over time. Very sophisticated programming for a human laborer. Can you trace the full extent of the damage? Already done, Commander. 17 separate systems compromised over the past 8 weeks, all set to cascade into complete failure within the next work cycle. If she'd succeeded, we would have lost 30% of facility output for at least a week. Venn looked impressed, despite himself. For a primitive species, this is remarkably elegant sabotage. I had her arrested immediately, brought to my command office in restraints, 2 guards flanking her. She stood there looking at me with eyes that showed no fear, just calm acceptance, like she'd known this was coming and had made peace with it. 7419. You sabotaged Imperial production systems. The penalty is execution. Do you deny this? No. Simple. Direct. No pleading. Why? You're an above-average worker. You could have survived here. Why throw that away? She was quiet for a moment, then, because you were going to execute us anyway. The production quotas you've been increasing every month. They're impossible to maintain. You're working us to death. Slowly. Cleanly. Efficiently. The mortality rate has climbed from 12% to 17% in the last cycle. We all knew what was coming. At least this way, I slowed you down, made your war machine hiccup, bought my people time. I studied her. She was right about the quotas. Command had ordered increased production targets. Meeting them meant pushing the humans harder. Your people, I said. You could have escaped. Could have saved yourself. Why sacrifice yourself for people you barely know? Because that's what we do. We look after each other, even when it's pointless, even when it costs us everything. She looked at me directly. You wouldn't understand. Your species doesn't have that weakness. You've bred it out. Efficiency over empathy. That's what makes you good conquerors. That's also what makes you empty. Weakness. She'd said it like it was something valuable. I dismissed the guards. How did you learn about Imperial systems? We don't train slaves in advanced technology. I was an engineer before you invaded, worked on human military systems. Your technology is more advanced, but the principles are similar. One of your maintenance techs was careless, left a technical manual tablet in Sector 7. I found it, studied it, memorized it. Everything I needed was in that manual. And you used that knowledge to wage war against us. I used that knowledge to slow you down, to give my people a few more days of life, to be more than just a tool in your machine, to prove that even as slaves, we're still people who can choose. You took our world, our freedom, our future, but you can't take our ability to resist. I should have executed her immediately. The doctrine was clear. Sabotage meant death, public execution to deter others. It was the foundation of imperial slave management. But I didn't execute her. Instead, I had her transferred to isolation detention. I told myself I needed more intelligence from her. But looking back, I think it was the first crack in my certainty. The first moment I saw a human as something other than a tool. I interrogated Liora over the next 10 days. Standard procedure: assess the threat, determine if others were involved. She answered every question directly. Yes, she'd acted alone. No, there was no organized resistance. She'd done it because someone had to. Because watching her people die slowly while building weapons for their oppressors felt worse than dying quickly for trying to fight back. You knew you'd be caught eventually, I said during the 5th session. Eventually, yes. The more systems I corrupt, the higher the probability of detection. And you knew the penalty. Obviously, I've watched you execute others for less. Yet you did it anyway. Sacrifice yourself for a symbolic gesture that changed nothing. You delayed production by hours. The war continues. Your people remain enslaved. She smiled, bitter. You really don't understand, do you? It wasn't symbolic. It was defiance. It was proving that even as slaves, we're still people who can choose. You took everything from us, but you can't take our ability to resist. That's ours. That matters more than you can comprehend. I found myself returning to her cell more often than interrogation required, asking questions that weren't tactical, about human culture, their history, what drove them to keep fighting when fighting was suicide. She answered patiently, like teaching a student. I learned that humans had concepts they called dignity and honor, that they valued these more than survival itself. Tirynthian culture had no equivalent. We valued strength, efficiency, order. Dignity was weakness wearing a different name. But talking to Liora, I started to question that. Started to see that what we called weakness might be something else, something that made humans dangerous in ways we hadn't anticipated. You couldn't break someone whose sense of self didn't depend on their circumstances. The coup attempt came on day 43 of Liora's detention. Internal Tirynthian politics, always brutal. Sub-Commander Kaelrik had been positioning himself for months, questioning my loyalty to imperial doctrine. My crime was being too lenient, too slow to execute troublemakers, too interested in understanding humans. Kaelrik believed in pure efficiency. Humans were tools. Tools didn't need understanding. The attack came during shift change when the facility was most vulnerable. Kaelrik's faction, 30 officers and 60 troops, seized the main control center and the armory, cut communications. Kaelrik broadcast facility wide. Commander Kaelrik has been relieved of duty for conduct inconsistent with imperial values. I am assuming command. All personnel will report to their stations. Resistance will be met with termination. I was in my quarters when it happened. My personal guard, 4 soldiers who'd served with me for cycles, immediately went to defensive positions. Commander, we need to evacuate you to the secure bunker. No, We need to retake control before Thorvik consolidates power. I pulled up facility schematics. Thorvik held the control center and armory. But he didn't have the production sectors, didn't have the power core. We can move through maintenance tunnels to Sector 7, access the backup command station, restore communications, and rally loyal forces. Commander, Sector 7 is the human labor area. We'll be vulnerable. We'll be vulnerable anywhere. Move. We made it to the maintenance tunnels before Thorvik's forces located us. Move through the industrial guts of the facility. Pipes and cables and passages designed for machinery maintenance, not combat. We emerged in Sector 7 near the assembly lines, found chaos. The humans had heard the announcements. Most had stopped working, gathered in groups, whispering. When I appeared with armed guards, they scattered. All except one. Liora, still at her station, still working. She looked up when I approached. Commander, you're having a bad day. Sub-Commander Thorvik has seized control. I need to access the backup command station. It's in this sector. I know where it is. I've sabotaged it twice. Of course she had. Can you reverse the sabotage? She considered. Probably. Why would I? Because Thorvik's first action will be to execute all humans he considers security risks, anyone with specialized knowledge. Engineers, technicians, you're top of that list. And you're offering what? My life in exchange for helping you? I'm offering a chance. More than you'd get from Thorvik. She studied me, then nodded. Show me the station. We reached the backup command center, a small room filled with monitoring equipment and communication arrays. Liora examined the systems, hands moving over controls with confidence. I corrupted the authentication protocols. Give me 10 minutes. Thorvik's forces found us after 8 minutes. They breached the sector entrance with heavy weapons. My guard engaged them in the corridor. I heard weapons fire. I heard one of my guards scream. Liora kept working. Almost there. Just need to... An explosion. The door buckled inward. 3 of Thorvik's soldiers pushed through. My remaining guard, just 2 now, opened fire, dropped 1 soldier, wounded another. Then they took hits themselves, fell, and I was alone with Liora and 2 hostile soldiers pointing weapons at us. Commander Kaelrik, one said, you're under arrest. Come peacefully or be terminated. I raised my weapon. I knew I was outgunned. Knew this was the end. Then Liora did something impossible. She grabbed a plasma cutter from the nearby tool rack and charged the soldiers, not attacking them, just charged, screaming, waving the cutter. It was suicide. The soldiers turned their weapons toward her, and in that half-second of distraction, I fired, dropped both soldiers before they could shoot her. Silence. Just the sound of cooling metal and distant fighting. Liora stood there, plasma cutter in hand, breathing hard. Did that actually work? She asked. You almost got killed. I noticed, but you didn't. You're welcome. I stared at her. A human slave. Had just risked her life to save me. Her captor. The one who'd enslaved her people. It made no tactical sense. And it was the bravest thing I'd ever seen. Liora got the backup command station operational within minutes. I restored communications and broadcast to all loyal forces, regroup, defend critical infrastructure, prepare for counterattack. The response was mixed. Some units acknowledged. Others stayed silent. Thorvik controlled maybe 40% of the facility. I controlled 30%. The rest was contested. What about humans? Liora asked. She was monitoring security feeds, watching as Thorvik's forces moved through sectors, rounding up workers. What about them? Thorvik just ordered them confined to barracks, says he'll sort out which ones to keep and which to eliminate after he consolidates power. I pulled up the feed, watched hundreds of humans being herded at gunpoint into residential sectors. watched families separated, watched children crying. It's standard procedure during facility lockdown. He's going to kill them. You know that. Anyone who worked in sensitive areas, anyone with technical knowledge, including everyone in Sector 7, including the people I've worked with for 3 cycles. I can't protect them. I'm fighting to retake command. Resources are limited. Then give me access to security systems. Let me warn them. Let them defend themselves. They're unarmed, untrained. They'd be slaughtered. Better than waiting to be executed. Her voice was sharp. You want my help retaking this facility? Fine, but I'm not helping you enslave my people all over again. Either we save everyone or I walk away right now. I should have refused. Should have reminded her she was a slave. Instead, I gave her access to the security network. Warn your people. Tell them to shelter in place. Seal the doors. Don't engage unless threatened. They're going to need weapons. I'm not arming slaves. She smiled, cold. You just armed one. A plasma cutter is a weapon if you use it right. Let me access the supply manifests. I gave her access, watched as she typed quickly, sending messages through the facility's internal network to specific workers, coordinating, organizing, turning scattered slaves into resistance. You planned this, I said. No, but I'm adaptable. She looked at me. You think I spent 3 cycles here without making connections, without preparing for the day we'd have a chance to fight back? I was just waiting for the opportunity. You gave it to me. Over the next 6 hours, the facility descended into chaos. My forces engaged Thorviks in running battles through industrial sectors. Humans, armed with improvised weapons and coordinated through Liora's network, defended the residential areas. It wasn't organized resistance. They were scared, desperate. But they were fighting. And that changed everything. Thorvik broadcast again. Commander Kaelrik has armed the slaves. This is treason against the Empire. All forces are authorized to use lethal force against human insurgents. No quarter given. His troops moved on the residential sectors with heavy weapons. I watched the feeds. Watched humans with plasma cutters trying to hold corridors against trained soldiers with military equipment. It was a massacre. Would be a complete massacre if I didn't intervene. I could let it happen. Could focus on retaking the control center. The humans were acceptable losses. Thorvik would kill them whether I won or lost. But I'd watched Liora charge armed soldiers with a plasma cutter to save my life. Watched her risk everything for people who'd enslaved her. And I realized, if humans were capable of that kind of courage, they weren't tools. They were people, and people deserved better than being acceptable losses. I redirected my forces, ordered them to reinforce the residential sectors, to protect the humans instead of securing infrastructure. My second-in-command protested, "Commander, we need to take the control center." That's the strategic priority. The strategic priority is preventing Thorvik from committing genocide. Reinforce the residential sectors, now. My forces arrived at the residential areas within 20 minutes. Found humans holding barricades made from furniture and scrap metal, armed with tools, facing down Thorvik's soldiers. The arrival of my troops turned the fight. Thorvik's forces retreated. The humans survived. Barely. But they survived. Liora found me in the command center an hour later. Her face was bruised. Her arm was bandaged. But she was alive. You saved them. Why? I didn't have a good answer. Because it was the right thing to do. Since when do you care about right? Since a human slave risked her life to save mine. Since I realized that maybe you're worth more than I gave you credit for. She was quiet. Then, my people are asking what happens after. After Thorvik is defeated. Do we go back to being slaves? Or does something change? I didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because answering meant choosing between the empire I'd served and the moral awakening, happening inside me. The battle for facility control lasted 3 more days. My forces and Thorvik's traded control of sectors, neither gaining advantage. The humans stayed in residential areas, defended by my troops, waiting. Liora coordinated their defense while helping me manage tactics. She was remarkably good at it, better than some trained officers. "You should have been a military commander," I told her during a pause in the fighting. I was, sort of. Civil defense coordinator on Kepler 7 before you invaded, organized evacuation efforts, coordinated resistance. Not that it mattered. Your fleet crushed us in 6 weeks. Then you became a slave. Then I became a survivor. There's a difference. She pulled up a tactical display. Thorvik is consolidating forces in Sector 3, probably preparing for a major push on the control center. If he takes it, he wins. Can we stop him? Not with the forces we have, unless we use humans. 300 workers who'd fight if we armed them properly. They're not trained. They're motivated. They know Thorvik will kill them if he wins. Fear is excellent motivation. I looked at the display. She was right. I needed more fighters. But arming slaves was treason. If I do this, the Empire will never forgive it. I'll be marked as a traitor, regardless of whether I defeat Thorvik. I'm asking you to choose what's right over what's easy. I authorized it, sent orders to open the armory reserves, distributed weapons to human volunteers, watched as former slaves became soldiers. Liora commanded them, organized them into units, turned 300 scared workers into something that resembled a fighting force. The assault on Sector 3 happened at dawn. My Tirynthian troops led the attack, hitting Thorvik's defensive positions. The humans followed, providing support fire, overwhelming through numbers what they lacked in training. Thorvik's forces were caught off guard. They'd prepared to fight soldiers. Hadn't expected armed slaves. They broke, retreated toward the control center. The final battle happened at the main control center. Thorvik had 60 soldiers left. We had twice that, but numbers weren't enough. Thorvik had prepared for the siege. Heavy defenses, automated weapons, killing fields. We took heavy casualties in the first assault, lost 15 Tirynthians and 30 humans. The second assault failed similarly. Liora approached with an alternative. There's a maintenance shaft that runs under the control center, leads to the environmental systems. If we can get a team in there, we can flood the center with sedative gas. Put everyone to sleep. Take them without further casualties. That shaft is too small for Tirynthian physiology, but humans can fit. Give me 10 volunteers and 30 minutes. I should have said no. Sending humans into danger felt wrong, but the alternative was more casualties. You have 20 minutes. She took 12 volunteers, all knowing they might die. They entered the maintenance shaft while I watched through feeds, saw them crawl through passages barely wide enough for human bodies, saw them reach the environmental control room, saw them flood the control center with sedative gas, saw Thorvik and his forces collapse within minutes. When we entered the control center, everyone was unconscious, including 3 of Liora's team who'd been caught by the gas. The rest were in the tunnel, coughing, alive. Mission successful, facility retaken. And I'd done it by relying on humans I'd once considered disposable tools. Imperial Command's orders came within a day. Brief, direct. Commander Kaelrik, you will execute all human laborers who participated in armed resistance. Execution will be public and documented, no exceptions. Acknowledge. I stared at the message. They wanted me to execute the people who'd saved my life, who'd helped me defeat Thorvik, who'd fought because I'd asked them to. They wanted me to kill them for not dying passively. I went to the residential sectors where humans were sheltering, found them gathered, exhausted, wounded, waiting. Saw Liora among them. Everyone grew quiet when I entered. The Empire has sent orders regarding those who fought, I said. I watched fear spread through the crowd. The orders are clear. All who took up arms are to be terminated. Public executions to deter future resistance. Someone sobbed. Others held hands, preparing for death. I'm not following those orders, I said. The crowd looked confused. The Empire wants me to execute you for fighting, for resisting. I'm refusing that order, which means I'm now a traitor, which means I'm taking this facility independent of Imperial authority, which means you're no longer slaves. You're free. Silence. Then Liora. What does that mean? It means I'm declaring this facility autonomous, under my command, but no longer taking Imperial orders. It means you're no longer slaves. It means we're probably all going to die when the Empire sends forces to retake the facility. But at least we'll die for something that matters. An older human spoke. Why? Why throw away everything for us? Because a slave had risked her life to save mine. Because watching humans fight with courage I'd never shown made me ashamed. Because I'd spent 3 cycles treating people as tools, and it took a coup to show me what they really were. Because you taught me something the Empire never could, I said. You taught me that strength isn't about domination, that honor isn't about following orders, and that some things matter more than efficiency. He nodded. What do you need from us? Everything. The Empire will respond with force. We have maybe a week before they arrive. We need to prepare defenses, organize resistance, and hope someone hears what we're doing and decides it's worth supporting. They stayed. All of them. Even knowing it probably meant death. They stayed because running was survival and standing was dignity. The next 6 days were preparation. We fortified the facility, trained more humans, sent messages to independent systems asking for support. Few responded, nothing that changed reality. We were isolated, surrounded, facing annihilation. Liora and I worked side by side, planning, preparing. She'd become my second in command. Do you regret it? She asked one night. Regret what? All of this. Betraying your empire. Probably dying because you chose to save us. No, I don't regret it. Because at least I'll die, knowing I chose something. That I wasn't just following orders. I looked at her. You did that. You showed me what courage looks like, what honor means. You taught me I was just obedient. There's a difference. She smiled. If we somehow survive this, what happens next? Anywhere that isn't here. Maybe one of the outer rim systems, somewhere we can build something that isn't based on one species dominating another. You really think that's possible? No, probably not. But I think it's worth trying, and isn't that what you've been teaching me? That trying matters, even when success is impossible. The Empire's fleet arrived on day 7. 15 warships, overwhelming force. They broadcast demands, surrender immediately, face trial, resistance will be met with bombardment. I recorded a response on open channels. This is Commander Kaelrik. I am refusing Imperial orders to execute humans who fought in defense of this facility. I am declaring this facility independent. All personnel here are free. We will defend our freedom with whatever means necessary. They gave us 6 hours to reconsider. Then began bombardment. Not heavy enough to destroy, they wanted it intact, but enough to demonstrate power. We endured, waited for the ground assault. It came at dawn. Imperial troops, hundreds of them professional soldiers, stormed the facility through multiple breach points. We fought. Humans and Tirynthians together, defending corridors we'd fortified. We held it for 3 hours, then 5, then 8. Longer than expected. But we were losing. Slowly. Inevitably. Running out of ammunition, out of fighters. I was in the command center with Liora and 20 defenders when they breached our sector. I knew we had minutes. "I'm sorry," I told her. "Sorry I couldn't save you." "Don't be. This is more than I expected. At least I died free." The door exploded inward. Imperial troops flooded in. I raised my weapon. Then I heard a voice. "Commander Kaelrik, stand down. This is Admiral Kess. We're not here to kill you." I didn't lower my weapon. "You're here to execute us. We're here to offer terms. Your message was broadcast on open channels. Half the Empire heard it. 30% of our officer corps is debating whether you're a traitor or a hero. Command wants this contained before it becomes a wider problem. So we're offering terms, surrender peacefully, and we'll exile you. You and anyone who wants to follow you. Transport to a neutral system. Supplies for 1 cycle. But alive. And if I refuse? Then we flatten this facility with everyone in it, and we spend the next cycle hunting down every officer who agrees with your message." Admiral Kess stepped forward. "Take the deal, Kaelrik. Live. Keep your people alive. Prove that your way works." I looked at Liora, at the humans who'd fought beside me. All of us. Every human. Every Tirynthian who stayed. No exceptions. "Agreed. You have 10 minutes. We took the deal. Everyone gathered. 200 humans and 30 Tirynthians. Boarded Imperial transports. They gave us 1 cargo ship, supplies for a cycle, coordinates to a neutral world. Then they left us. Alive. Free. Exiled. 6 months later, we're still alive, still free. We settled on Haven's Edge, far enough from both empires that neither cares what we do. We're building something, not an empire, just a community. Humans and Tirynthians working together, proving it's possible. It's not easy. Old habits die hard. Some Tirynthians still struggle with seeing humans as equals. Some humans still flinch when my people give orders. But we're trying, making progress, learning that species doesn't determine worth. That what you choose matters more than what you were born to be. Liora leads the human population. I lead the Tirynthians. We make decisions together, equally. It's messy, slow, inefficient, and it works. Not perfectly, but well enough that people are thriving instead of just surviving. I think about my old life sometimes. The certainty, the simplicity, the comfort of never having to question whether you're doing the right thing because you're just following orders. That life is gone. I killed it when I chose to save humans instead of executing them. When I chose conscience over obedience. I don't regret it. Don't miss it. Don't want to go back to being someone who could enslave a species and call it efficiency. That person was strong in the ways the Empire valued, but weak in the ways that actually matter. Weak in courage. Weak in principle. Liora found me this morning, sitting on a ridge overlooking our settlement, watching the sunrise. She sat beside me. "Do you think they'll ever understand? Your empire? Whether what we did matters? No, probably not. They'll mark us as traitors, as failures. They'll never admit we found something better." "Does that bother you?" "Used to. Now I just feel sorry for them. They're trapped in a system that values strength over growth. Obedience over conscience." I looked at the settlement below, at humans and Tirynthians working together. We're free. They're not. I won. She smiled. Never thought I'd hear a Tirynthian say that. Never thought I'd become one who believes it. I'm writing this as a record. So someday, if anyone finds this settlement, they'll know what happened. How it started, why we chose exile over obedience, how a human slave taught an alien commander what it means to truly lead. I thought humans were weak, disposable, tools to be used and discarded. I was wrong. They were the strongest people I ever met, strong enough to resist when resistance meant death, strong enough to forgive when forgiveness meant working with people who'd enslaved them. strong enough to risk everything to save someone who'd treated them as less than people. Liora risked everything to teach me what it means to truly lead, to choose based on conscience rather than convenience, to value people over efficiency, to forgive even when forgiveness seems impossible. She didn't know me that. Didn't know me anything except hatred. But she chose something else. I chose to believe I could become better. And that belief changed everything. The Empire will probably find us eventually. Will probably come to finish what they started. Will probably kill us all for proving their system isn't the only way. But until that day, we're building something here. Something that proves people can change. That enemies can become allies. That courage and forgiveness can overcome hatred. I don't know if it will last. Don't know if we'll survive. I don't know if anyone will remember what we tried to build. But I know it matters. I know that trying was worth it. Know that Liora was right. Dignity matters more than survival. I spent my life serving an empire that told me strength was about domination. She taught me that real strength is choosing what's right even when it costs everything, especially when it costs everything. So I'll end this with a question. Not for me, for you, whoever you are, whenever you're reading this, whatever side you're on, if someone you despised, someone who'd hurt you, someone who'd treated you as less than human, if that person tried to change, if they risked everything to become better, if they proved they were willing to die for what they'd learned from you, could you forgive them? Could you work beside them? Build something new with them? Trust them with your life? Or would you hold on to hatred forever? Stay trapped in cycles of revenge, choose comfortable anger over difficult hope? I can't answer that for you. I can only tell you what Liora chose. What the humans chose, what saved my life, and gave me something worth living for. They chose forgiveness, chose to believe people could change, choose to build instead of destroy, and that choice made all the difference.